I want to lift up for you from the book of Exodus. From the book of Exodus, chapter 33. I want to start at verse 3, and then I'm going to skip down to verse 12. From the book of Exodus, chapter 33, verse 3, and then I'm going to skip down to verses 12 through 19. It reads this way. It says, God's saying, go up to the land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go up among you, or I would consume you on the way, for you are a stiff-necked people. Jump down to verse 12. Moses said to the Lord, see, you have said to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know who you're going to send with me. Yet you have said, I know you by your name. You told me I have found favor in your sight. But now if I have found favor in your sight, show me your ways, so that I may know you and find favor in your sight. Consider too that this nation is your people. And God said to him, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. Moses said to him, if your presence will not go, don't carry us up from here. For how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people, unless you go with us? In this way, we shall be distinct, I and your people, from every people on the face of the earth. The Lord said to Moses, I will do the very thing that you have asked, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name. Moses said, show me your glory, I pray. And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before you and proclaim before you my name, the Lord. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy on whom I show mercy. The word of God. Sisters and brothers, this morning I want to talk briefly from the topic, glory ain't good enough. Glory ain't good enough. Glory is a very abstract, beautiful, powerful, descriptive, and dangerous word. Many people get into pastoring seeking glory. Many come seeking glory for themselves. Now, from the pew or from Facebook and Instagram, pastoring may look like a glorious profession. People see the anniversaries, the fancy flyers and the posts. They see the flowing robes and the pomp and circumstance. And in some cases, they see the celebrity status of some pastors and people, and they feel called to get glory. But sisters and brothers, frankly, many are called by their lust for power or popularity, and they ain't been called by God. Because when they actually get behind this sacred desk and wear the collar, when they finally sit in the seat, they find very little of it is as they expected. They find hard to deal with people. They find people who care less about your title. They find drama outweighs the accolades and the honor, and the problems outnumber the people in the pews. Frankly, they quickly find out that glory ain't good enough. Then there's those who they're truly called. Y'all remember Jesus said, many are called, but few are chosen. And these folks come to this work because they're seeking God's glory. They want to show how God can do new and amazing things. They're dedicated to showing the transformative power of God to liberate communities and set the captives free, to save souls and see the masses yield to the name of Jesus. But when they actually begin the work, they find that the road to destruction is often paved with good intentions. The people of God can be a real barrier to the work of God. You know, the needs, the quirks, the cliques, the stinginess, the faithlessness, and the fear of people will always get in the way of what a pastor feels called to do. Especially with a leader who has not stood the test of time. Often those who come to this work bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, seeking to give God the glory, often find out very quickly that glory ain't good enough. Okay, let me get personal. I was convinced as a young preacher that all the preachers before me had been wrong. That somehow our churches were struggling because we weren't hitting the mark of glorifying God. So somehow, if we glorify God more, our churches would be overflowing. I was convinced that if I just got to my first church and preached the gospel, simple, full, and free, if I just strived to glorify God in all I did, then the church doors would burst open with a sea of people. And the once dying church I inherited would be transformed into a mega church. But Rosalie and I can attest that no matter how hard we tried, all we found out was how to pump water out the basement, how to pay bills out of our own pocket, how to shovel the snow, how to chauffeur the few members we had around, how to clean the toilets, and how to deal with complaining, non-tithing, faithless, and preach to empty pews. If preachers would be honest with ourselves, at some point you quickly begin to realize that glory ain't good enough for leading Negroes. I'm sorry, I came here for a 36-year pastoral anniversary, so I gotta show y'all what it looked like behind the desk. As we look at the text, you all remember the people had just been through a self-inflicted major plague which God sent on them because they built and worshiped a golden calf. God had been ready to wipe them out entirely. And if you remember, it was Moses who interceded on their behalf and convinced God not to. Here now, God commands Moses to leave Mount Sinai and to go to the promised land. But God will not personally go with them because God's presence would likely destroy them along the way because they were a stiff-necked people. I wonder if many of our churches lack the presence of God because the people are so trifling, God's presence might start taking folks out. Think about this. If God had no patience for them, how do you think their pastor felt? But Moses, being a good pastor, one that loves the people, despite themselves, challenges God. Listen to what he says. See, you have said to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know who you will send with me. Remember, Moses did not want this job. Remember, Moses killed an Egyptian on their behalf, and the people despised Moses more than they did their oppressors.
They did that. You're right. You own it.
He did not want to deal with these folks, nor the drama that came with leading them. Moses had a nice job. He had a beautiful black wife. He had no stress, and he kept a low profile. But it was God who convinced him to come out of all of that and to lead these people out of slavery. And the way God did it was by promising Moses that the presence of God would always be with him. Now, these same people that God wanted to get free, that Moses said, I want to leave them Negroes alone. Now these same people have made God so mad that God tells Moses, I'm out. I ain't dealing with them. That's what's in the book. Moses said to God, you told me. You told me to bring this people out. Sisters and brothers, I can't tell you how many times me and God have had to have a come to Jesus meeting about the people God sent me to pastor. I did not want to pastor. I did not want this. And when the situation gets out of hand and it seems as if God is out of the picture, I've had to remind God that this is your plan, not mine. Lord, I need you to go with me. These is your people. Moses wanted God to commit on the strength of their relationship that God would never leave them nor forsake them, no matter how ignorant these Israelites were. You know, we often say it, and it's true. You sure enough could tell that these Jews was black. Moses leverages his relationship, his favor with God on behalf of the people. Hear what he said. Now, if I have found favor in your sight, show me your ways so that I may know you and find favor in your sight. And then he says, consider too that this nation is your people. Pastor Harris, I know over these 36 years that there have been plenty of times that you have had to remind God that these ain't your folks. They are God's folks. And if God ain't willing to deal with them, how in the world does God expect you to deal with them? But Moses is effective and convincing because God begins to acquiesce. God can't even deny what Moses is saying. God assures Moses, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. But that wasn't good enough. Moses still wanted more assurance. Moses here now is basically saying, Lord, don't play with me. If your presence will not go, don't carry us up from here. For how shall it be known that I found favor in your sight, I and your people, unless you go with us? In other words, Moses is saying to God, you have told me I have found favor. You have said that these are your people called by your name. If you don't go with us, then how do we prove your word to be true? You must go with us because that's actually what makes us your people. That's what differentiates us. Here's what he says. In this way, we shall be distinct, I and your people, from every other people on the face of the earth.
All right.
The Lord said to Moses, I will do the very thing that you have asked, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name. Moses got God to commit in multiple different ways, non-negotiable commitment to the people, even though the people were not committed to Moses or God. But then Moses wanted what he thought was the ultimate assurance and sign from God that God would be with them. Moses asked God, show me your glory. Show me your glory. Moses was already the hand-picked leader of God. Moses already talked to God face to face. He already was a friend of God. God already called his name. But even that wasn't good enough for Moses. What Moses really wanted was more than God's presence. Moses wanted to see God's glory. Remember the burning bush? What attracted Moses was God's glory, not the title and not the trappings of leadership. Moses wanted to behold God's glory without dying. This would have been the ultimate assurance that God's full presence would be with the people without killing them. This would also, in Moses' mind, prove to him that he was indeed favored. But listen to how God responds. I won't show you all my glory, but I'll show you all my goodness. I won't show you all my glory, but I will show you all of my goodness. I will show you all of my grace, and I will show you all of my mercy. God says, I'm not going to show you what I am, but I am going to show you who I am. You may not see my glory, but you will get to see my character. Glory ain't good enough when goodness and mercy is required. I've been in God's presence. I seek God's presence every single day, and it just keeps me yearning for more and more. So I thought God's glory would be enough for me, but glory ain't good enough. What has sustained me through trial and tribulation, the fire and the flood, through gossip and backbiting, through drought and famine, has not been God's glory, but it has been God's goodness. I wake up every day with the desire to someday embrace my God and behold God's glory with my own eyes. But what assures me and what keeps me going every day is not God's glory, but God's goodness. And no trifling, no persecution, no oppression, no injustice, no trial and tribulation, no pandemic will ever be able to separate us from the love of God. That's why Jeremiah said his mercies are new every morning. See, God's glory might kill me, but God's goodness, God's grace, and God's mercy sure enough will keep me. I think about Paul. When Paul had the thorn in his side, he pleaded with God to take it out, but God said, my grace is sufficient. I think about David, who said, I once was young, I once was old, I once was young, but now I'm old, and I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor their seed begging for bread. David said, I would have lost heart unless I believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Sisters and brothers, I ask you today, have you ever wanted God to show up with so much power Have you ever wanted God to show you a sign? But at the end of the day, when you look back over your life, and you think things over, you may not have had some resurrection moment. You may not have had some major healing. You may not have had some breakthrough that would go viral. But what you have is that your good days outweigh your bad days. When you look back